Klaus has a nice habit of picking one verse. You know, you can appreciate people. When I was in the back talking with your son, and he was talking about how he's about to go on a trip to California, go hang out with Sandy and everyone. And I'm like, everyone's on vacation. Like, we need a calendar just to show when everyone's going to be gone. You know, but I was back there talking to him, and I said, you know, it's odd how some ministers, teachers, or preachers, or whoever is saying something can be so mean towards others. You know, and you may be in the same clan. You know, they did it to Moses, didn't they? They were good with Aaron. Moses, they gave a hard time. And I said, that's hard to do, because at some point, you're going to have to realize that each person is presenting for God. And therefore, God uses each person differently, because people are different. Born different, trained to be the same, right? So with Klaus, that's why I said that, was, man, he always gets me with that one verse. There's, you know, he's the only one. Joel has his way of preaching. You know, Naphtali has his. Larry has his. Sam has his. Henry has his. But what I noticed about Klaus is he'll give you one verse, and he'll expand that thing the whole time, that one verse. And I haven't been able to do it yet, but one thing I can come with, Klaus, is one word. That's it, you know. So I'll stick to that. Today's word is mercy. We used to play this game called Mercy. Have you guys heard of that? Or am I telling my age? You ever hear of the game called Mercy? Where, young kids get the strangest of ideas, you know, to have fun or to be sportive. But Mercy was a game of surrendering. Usually you're going to be wrestling, and for the first one in a compromising position loses. So the first one to tap out when you're wrestling loses. Compromising position is what? I don't know. Maybe they got your arm behind your back. Maybe you can't breathe. Maybe they're just sitting on your chest. Whatever it was, you gotta say mercy.
Uncle.
Yes. Another word, right? As time went on, it became uncle. Right? And it should have been just called wrestling, right? Because that's what you do. It's not like there's other things you can do actively that are going to be like that. So, I don't know. It's a competition for the most part. But once they're in a compromising grip, you ask, do you surrender? And if so, they win. So, mercy was a game of showing mercy to a defeated foe. The word comes, mercy is a word that has its roots in Latin. The Latin word means reward, wages, pay, or hire. The word mercy derives from the medieval Latin merce or mercies, which means price paid. Mercy is a compassionate treatment of those in distress, especially when it is within one's power to punish or harm them. It is benevolence, forgiveness, kindness, and a variety of ethical, religious, social, and legal contexts. So, it's a disposition, meaning to forgive or show compassion. It's attested from early 13th century sense of an act to or exercise of forbearance of goodwill. So around the 1300s is when they started coming up with this word. There's French words and all that bunch of stuff that I can go into that'll match it, but you kind of get the gist. The seat of mercy, the golden covering of the Ark of the Covenant. They came up with that, 1530, but Jesus came up with that a long time ago. So that's more so from Tinsdale's writings and things like that. And then the songs. How many songs can you think of that have mercy in them? What comes to your mind right away? And when I could not reach mercy, mercy came running. Remember that one? Like a prisoner set free, right? Past all my failures to the point of my need. The sin that I carried was what? All I could see. And when I could not reach mercy, mercy came running to me. Oh, so you guys know the song. I thought I was going to sing today. I'm not going to sing today. I tried earlier. It wasn't working. So, worse is that Phillips, Craig, and Dean, I'll give them their credit. Who is the creator of all good things? We went over this earlier. Right? God. God is the creator of all good things. God is mercy and good, but why? What does it involve? Is there a commitment involved in mercy? Is there, I don't know, forgiveness involved? You guys tell me. These are questions, or both. Yes? No? Maybe? Yes? Yes? Okay. Okay. So, you've heard the saying, a rare quality of mercy. Or, you could say a rare blood type, pretty much. The mercy seat, built in the fashion that you saw in heaven, is what he told Moses. So Moses gets a vision, and he says, okay, I want you to make all of these things that you saw for me to dwell and have a presence with you people. And so in Exodus 20, if you want the verse 25, I'll give it to you. Exodus 20 and 25 is where that's taken from. And it starts off, and if thou wilt make me an altar of stone, thou shalt not build it of hewn stone. And if thou lift up thy tool upon it, thou hast polluted it. So here we hear God describe how to make the altar. So in case you had gone back in Genesis and thought about maybe Abel, Adam, Cain, and how did their altar look? Well, it looks like this. It looks like stones. What about Noah? Didn't he build an altar too? Once they got off the boat, Noah built an altar and gave praise to God, right? What was it built like? The same. So that's why I use this verse so that you see every altar is going to be the same. Do not pollute my altar. So Adam, Noah, Abraham, all offered and sacrificed on the same type of altar. These places that they put the altar became, later in history, a special place, as Isaac found himself on the altar with Abraham. But, of course, we know the story. Abraham didn't offer him. But what did that mount become? Didn't that become later where they would have Mount Zion, or where they would have all these different things like the temple and stuff popping up in this place of atonement? In Genesis, since you're in Exodus, go ahead quickly turn to Genesis 22, verse 9. Genesis chapter 22 and verse 9. We're going to read a little bit of this one. The other, I only did one verse. I'll give you a little bit more here for this one. And they came to the place which God had told him of, and Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took the knife to slay his son. And the angel of the Lord called out of heaven, and said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him, for now I know that thou fearest God, seeing that thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of the place Jehovah-Yireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. So did I make up that thing that I was talking about? When they build the altar, it's built a certain way, it's built for a certain purpose, and then what happens to that place once the altar has been built years later? They end up coming and residing there, or building something special there, right? So, when God spoke with Abraham, he said, Now I know. Why did he say that? What was this sacrifice? His son, right? What was the sacrifice before with Adam and Eve? Lamb, wasn't it? Right? Why would God use his son for this sacrifice? Isn't a sacrifice a test of loyalty? Why are you here today? Why did you sacrifice working today? Loyalty, right? He says, By this shall I know you love me. Why? You keep my Sabbaths. So is there a test involved with loyalty? Is there a sacrifice? Yeah? You think? Because isn't that what he said? I'll go back and read it in case y'all didn't see it. He says here in verse 12, and he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him, for now I know that thou fearest God. Right? So the fear of the Lord brings loyalty and sacrifice. Go to Genesis. Go a little bit back. Let's take it a little bit back. Because that's not only told Abraham. We're talking about mercy. And when God spoke with Abraham, he said, now I know all of these things, but he also spoke to him at another time, in case people didn't catch it, about mercy. And do you remember when he was talking about mercy in chapter 15 of Genesis? You remember what Abraham was doing about that time? He was hanging out with some people. Remember, I think one of his best friends was from this time. It says, but in the fourth generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. Right? What does that mean? The iniquity of the Amorites is not full yet. Doesn't that mean that God is showing mercy to those people? And they have a certain amount of time for that mercy. What about the Amalekites? We know about them too, right? It says the Amalekites have not, you should never be with them because they're certain people. I know I should probably go to the verse, but I'll just kind of skim through. Amalek was the son of Eliphaz, himself the son of Esau. So Amalek was the grandson of Esau, the ancestor of the Edomites and the brother of Jacob. And Eliphaz's concubine was Timnah, who was a Horite and a sister of Lothan. So this is where the Amalekites came from, because of this wife and because of the way Esau was leaving. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were all rejected because they felt rejected. And so from that point on, as you go down maybe to 1 Chronicles, I'll give you that one. 1 Chronicles 1:36, and it'll tell you a little bit more about it. But we're staying in Genesis. Genesis 36:16 says, Dora, or Duke, Korah, Duke, Gadam, and Duke, Amalek. These are the dukes that came of Eliphaz in the land of Edom. These were the sons of Edom. So you can read all of these stories yourself. I just wanted to give you the verses, and especially for the people on the line, so that they can follow behind or they can go back and do some research themselves. So it lets you know. Now you know when you see a duke, you know where they come from, right? Duke so-and-so, Duchess so-and-so. It's still a prince pretty much, but as we know, someone else had already taken those names of the prince, right? Abraham had another wife named Keturah after Sarah died. And, or no, it wasn't from them that they got that princess. They got the princess from, what was the other wife? From Egypt. The first one that he slept with, that had Ishmael. That's the one that the princes come from. So the dukes come from Esau, but still, it's a worldly, earthly kingdom being set up with princes and dukes to become kings. So that's where you get that history. But we're staying in Genesis, because we're talking about mercy. Sodom and Gomorrah. Abraham is seen pleading for mercy. And Genesis 18:23 is when he says it. Abraham approached and said, will ye indeed sweep away the righteousness with the wicked, the righteous with the wicked? But by Genesis 19, we find out a little bit more about the story. So Abraham, looking for mercy, he's learning about God. He's left his home to go live in a place that he didn't even know, and he's always moving. He has all these things going on. So when Jesus and the angels come to his tent and they said, you heard about Sodom and Gomorrah, we're definitely going to go check that place out, and we're going to destroy it. What's the first thing Abraham says? How are you going to destroy the good with the wicked? He didn't understand it, right? Good question. So he has a conversation, right? And he says, well, will you destroy it for how many? His number started off pretty big, right? Why? Wasn't Lot and everyone that was with Lot a part of what Abraham believed? So as far as he knows, when they split and Lot went towards Sodom and Gomorrah and Abraham stayed over here, he probably had relationships with some of those people. And so in his mind, he's like, no, there's enough. There's a few people there, right? But was that true? Since they had been so close to Sodom and Gomorrah, since they had kind of moved into the city, since all these things had happened, Was it still that way? Go to Genesis 19. Abraham is talking. He says, well, what if there is this many? No, there's not that many. What if there's this many? No, there's not that many. What if there's 10? Right? You hear that number come out, you're like, surely there's got to be 10. Okay, well, let's see. And in 19, verse 12, and the men said unto Lot, hast thou here any besides? Any besides what? Any besides you? You see, God has given us instruction to come here and to collect all these people. Him and Abraham have been talked about it, and we don't want to leave anyone behind. Right? That's deserving. So, hast thou here any besides? Son-in-law, and thy sons, and thy daughters, and whatsoever thou hast in the city, bring them out of this place. For we will destroy this place, because the cry of them is waxing great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord hath sent us to destroy it. And Lot went out and spake unto his sons-in-laws, which married his daughters, and said, Up, get you out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But he seemed as one that mocked unto his sons-in-law. And when the morning arose, when the angels hastened Lot, saying, Arise, take thy wife, and thy 2 daughters, which are here, lest thou be consumed in the iniquity of the city. Right? Did we hear about iniquity before? We had. Earlier when he was talking with Abraham. The iniquity of the Amorites is not filled yet. So you can kind of see the same situation going on here in verse 16. And while he lingered, the men laid hold upon his hand, and upon the hand of his wife, and upon the hand of his 2 daughters, and the Lord being merciful unto him, and they brought him forth and set him without the city. How many people did you count? 4? How many people were the angels there to get? Is that the number? And they couldn't even get that. That's sad. When you read these stories, does it have an effect on you personally? Can you see these things happening from back then right now? Where you assume people in church are that way. You assume people in your family or people that say God are that way. But was it so? They only had 4. And what do we know about those 4? Did they all make it? You look like you want me to switch. Oh, okay. And it came to pass, when they brought them forth abroad, that he said, Escape for thy life, look not behind thee, neither say thou in all the plain, except escape to the mountain, lest thou be consumed. Is that what you guys read? What's the first thing that Lot says? Now, all this stuff is going on. The angel's like, who else do you got? I need to get everybody out of here. There's a conversation going on. Unbeknownst to you, we're destroying this place. Go get everyone. No one wanted to leave except for those 4. They left, right? And then Lot says, well, maybe we don't have to go to the mountain. Maybe we can just go to that city, right? You've seen the Lord's mercy already. And so what's he seeking now? More of the Lord's mercy, right? Let's go to Zoar. This is a little city. Let's just go there. But what did the verse say? The verse said, neither stay thou in all the plain, escape to the mountain. Right? How many times has God shown us mercy and we're still looking for more? Even though it may bring harm to us. Do you have anyone, the angel said, mercy? Abraham pleaded for 10 and the angel could barely get 4. God, the angels, Abraham were trying to get more. But God says, in the Bible, he says, I would have covered you like a hen. But you wouldn't. He said, I've called, but none wanted it. You know? What verses, Eddie? What verses? Isaiah 66 verse 4 is where you get that from. Like I said, prison ministry, you know, and doing the homeless missions and stuff with the community makes it to where you realize what people are needing. And when they said, you know, when you get to jail, you finally have the time that they never had on the street to study the Bible. or to get closer to God. They don't know where to look. So that's why, one of the reasons why I always will give the Bible verse so that anyone that needs it can go find it. This one is found in Isaiah 66 verse 4. I'll let you get it. Isaiah 66 verse 4. And it says there, and I'm reading from the King James Version, I also will choose their delusions and will bring their fears upon them. Because when I called, none did answer. When I spake, they did not hear, but they did evil. And so, what is God trying to do? He's calling. He's letting us know. He's showing mercy. Do we understand it? Do we realize the severity? The angels had to physically grab them. This was the next day. And pull them out to destroy the city. And they were still asking for more. Even though he said, hey, don't stay in the plains, get to the mountains. What they asked for? A city in the plains. That's why I say, if the Bible is ever going to come to life, you're going to have to apply it to your own life and your own situations. A lot of people have always said, well, we don't see ourselves in the Bible. You're not going to see your name per se. You might see your name if you have a biblical name like John or Solomon or something like that. But other than that, you should know who you are. What person are you that represents God? And that's what brings us back around to the scripture reading of Proverbs 1, verse 24. When he says, because I have called, and I'm going to go through 28. Proverbs 1, verse 24 through 28. Because I have called, and ye refused. I have stretched out my hand, and no man regarded. But ye have set at naught all my counsel, and would none of my reproof. I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. When your fear cometh as desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind, when distress and anguish come upon you, then shall they call upon me, but I will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not find me. Why would God say something like that? Could it be because once you've been shown mercy, isn't it our job to do the same? To show mercy. How many people have done that? I'm not going to talk about all the parables and all the stories where, the guy that owed all the money, he definitely could not pay it. And they were like, we're going to take your kids, and we're going to put you in jail until you pay. And what to do? The guy started crying, trying to figure everything out. What the ruler say? You know what? Don't worry about it. I'm going to have mercy on you. You're forgiven. You don't have to pay it. And then somebody saw the same guy out shaking somebody down for the money they owed. Right? That's not mercy for mercy. And so the ruler calls him back in and says, you know what? I did show you mercy, but guess what? I heard about everything you were doing, and so we're going to retract that. You owe. So there's stories that back it up. Lot yells out, how about this city? And it's a small one and still looking for mercy. And little does he know, his kids or his daughters, were able to start confusion from that situation. Would they have been able to get the liquor if they had gone to the mountains and not another city? No. So sometimes God has us being merciful and going out of his way to do stuff for us, and we're going right back into trouble. Abraham had Ishmael, and God said, they got to go. He's not the son of promise. What did Abraham ask for? Mercy. Yeah, I'm going to bless your son, but can you bless this guy too? Imagine that. Having to put your son and his mom out. Period. Does that seem like a merciful God? But then we see what happens later on with Hagar. I can't remember her name. And the angel came, and they're going to bless him, and princes are going to come from Ishmael and things like that. So the Lord again showing mercy. Jacob, What about Jacob? Why are we talking about Jacob and all these different people? Altars. Mercy. Didn't Jacob build an altar? Jacob said what? Truly this is the place of the Lord. Right? When he finished dreaming, and he built an altar there. And he named it. And while there, what else did he do? Something that I mentioned in the beginning. Didn't he play mercy? Didn't he wrestle? He did, right? He wrestled with the Lord, didn't he? Until daybreak. He says, let me go. I will not let you go until you bless me. Okay, go back to the beginning. What did I say we used to do as kids? We used to do this game called mercy, right? Wrestling. And for some reason it hit me. I'm like, you remember Jacob was wrestling with the Lord. So it's nothing beyond the Lord to put these things of his word in your heart when going through things. When I could not reach mercy, mercy came running to me, right? Could Jacob reach mercy? The ladder was right there, right? Saw him ascending and descending. Could he reach it? No. So where did mercy come? To him. And he wrestled with it, didn't he? And he was blessed afterwards, wasn't he? So Moses, built after Jacob, or Israel, winds up in Egypt for slavery. They're set free and building a tabernacle, and after the vision in heaven, God put the knowledge to build in the men themselves. I always thought that was amazing how some people say, oh, well, I have to go to school. I go back to school, go learn these new skills, and got to go do this to get this job. And I'm like, well, if the Lord knew that, yeah, how do slaves not know how to build? Right? They had come from Egypt. They didn't build anything. They built a lot of stuff. But they didn't know how to build the house of the Lord, the pieces of the tabernacle. So God puts it on their heart how to do it. I said, that is amazing. You know, when it could not reach mercy, he came to us. Here, I'm going to put it on your heart. So what's impossible for us is always possible with God. Instructions of what to do with the blood on the altar and what it's for. Then Jesus is born, a sacrifice foretold for centuries. The Lamb of God, the atonement, the sacrifice, the open show of mercy and forgiveness. He's lied on, he's beaten, ripped off his beard, they spit on him. You hearing all this stuff? And this was already foretold ahead of time. So, they hung him on a tree. They crucified him. They buried him. And he arose again the third day as prophecy would have it. And after a few had spoken with him and seen him, he returns to heaven. Now, for me, I had to pause. And I know other people should probably pause too. How much of the Bible do you believe? How much of this animals walking into the ark invisible, invisible angels, invisible sin, invisible dead devil? Everything invisible. What can you really believe, and how far is a stretch of the imagination? By this point, I'm thinking to myself, I did not hear anything. I didn't get it. I had been talking about who? Then we talked about Adam and Eve. They had the altar. Where's the blood? On the altar. What about Noah? Where's the blood? On the altar. Okay, keep going. What about Abraham? Where's the blood? On the altar. Keep going. Moses, where's the blood? On the altar. On the mercy seat. Okay, Jesus is hung on a tree, crucified, and died. How much blood did he lose? Right? We were talking about this morning. Did they pierce him here, or did they pierce him here?